we were told that this was the young Empress, wife of the Emperor Kwang-hsu. She said, "Her Majesty has sent me to meet you," and was very sweet and polite, and had beautiful manners, but was not very pretty. Then we heard a loud voice from the hall saying, "Tell them to come in at once." We went into this hall immediately, and saw an old lady dressed in a beautiful yellow satin gown, embroidered all over with pink peonies, and wearing the same kind of headdress with flowers on each side made of pearls and jade, a pearl tassel on the left side, and a beautiful phoenix in the center made of purest jade. Over her gown she wore a cape, the most magnificent and costly thing I ever saw. This cape was made of about 3,500 pearls the size of a canary bird's egg, all exactly alike in color and perfectly round. It was made on the fishnet pattern, and had a fringe of jade pendants, and was joined with 2 pure jade clasps. In addition to this, Her Majesty wore 2 pairs of pearl bracelets, 1 pair of jade bracelets, several jade rings, and on her third and little fingers of her right hand she wore gold fingernail protectors about 3 inches long, and on the left hand 2 fingernail protectors made of jade and about the same length. Her shoes were trimmed with small tassels made of pearls and embroidered with tiny pieces of different colored jade. Her Majesty stood up when she saw us and shook hands with us. She had a most fascinating smile, and was very much surprised that we knew the court etiquette so well. After she had greeted us, she said to my mother, "Yu Tai Tai, Lady Yu, you are a wonder the way you have brought your daughters up. They speak Chinese just as well as I do, although I know they have been abroad for so many years. And how is it that they have such beautiful manners?" "Their father was always very strict with them," my mother replied. "He made them study their own language first, and they had to study very hard." "I am pleased to hear their father has been so careful with them," Her Majesty said, "and given them such a fine education." She shook my hands and looked into my face and smiled and kissed me on both cheeks, and said to my mother, "I wish to have your daughters and hope they will stay with me." We were very much pleased at this and thanked her for her kindness. Her Majesty asked us all sorts of questions about our Paris gowns, and said we must wear them all the time, as she had very little chance to see them at the court. She was particularly in love with our Louis XV high heel shoes. While we were talking to her we saw a gentleman standing at a little distance, and after a while she said, "Let me introduce you to the Emperor Kwang-hsu, but you must call him Wan Sui Ye, Master of 10,000 years, and call me Lao Zhu Zhong, the Great Ancestor." His Majesty shyly shook hands with us. He was a man about 5 feet 7 inches in height, very thin, but with very strong features, high nose and forehead, large brilliant black eyes, strong mouth, very white, even teeth, altogether good looking. I noticed he had a very sad look, although he was smiling all the time we were there. At this juncture the head eunuch came, knelt down on the marble floor, and announced that Her Majesty's chair was ready, and she asked us to go with her to the audience hall, distant about 2 minutes' walk, where she was going to receive the heads of the different boards. It was a beautiful day, and her open chair was waiting. This chair is carried by 8 eunuchs all dressed in official robes, a most unusual sight. The head eunuch walked on her left side, and the second eunuch on her right side, each with a steadying hand on the chair pole. 4 eunuchs of the 5th rank in front and 12 eunuchs of the 6th rank walked behind. Each eunuch carried something in his hand, such as Her Majesty's clothes, shoes, handkerchiefs, combs, brushes, powder boxes, looking glasses of different sizes, perfumes, pins, black and red ink, yellow paper, cigarettes, water pipes, and the last one carried her yellow satin covered stool. Besides this, there were 2 amahs, old women servants, and 4 servant girls all carrying something. This procession was most interesting to see and made one think it a lady's dressing room on legs. The Emperor walked on Her Majesty's right and the Young Empress on the left, as did also the Court ladies. The audience hall was about 200 feet long, but about 150 feet wide, and at the left side was a long table covered with yellow satin. When Her Majesty came down from the chair, she went into the hall and mounted her throne just behind this table, and His Majesty mounted a smaller one at her left side, the ministers all kneeling on the floor in front of her and on the opposite side of the table. At the back of the hall was a large dais about 20 feet long by about 18 feet wide, enclosed by a magnificently carved railing about 2 feet high, running all the way round, open only in the front in 2 places, just large enough for a person to pass through. These 2 openings were reached by a flight of 6 steps. At the back of this dais was a small screen, and immediately in front of this, in the center, was Her Majesty's throne. Immediately behind was an immense carved wood screen, the most beautiful thing I ever saw, 20 feet long by 10 feet high. In front of Her Majesty's throne was a long narrow table. At the left side was a smaller throne for the Emperor. The theme of the carving and furnishings of this dais was the phoenix and a peony most exquisitely carved in ebony wood. In fact, the theme of the entire room was the same. On each side of Her Majesty's throne were 2 upright ebony poles, on the top of which were peacock feathers made into the shape of a fan. The upholstery was entirely of yellow Chinese velvet. Just before Her Majesty took her seat on her throne, she ordered us to go behind this screen with the Young Empress and the Court ladies. This we did, and could hear the conversation between Her Majesty and the ministers very plainly, and as my readers will see later, I made good use of this. End of Chapter 2. Read by J.C. Guan, January 2009.